The bank manager looked down at his screen, then back at me and said, "Your mother was here yesterday afternoon." For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. The lobby was quiet except for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the faint clicking of a teller counting bills behind the glass. I could smell coffee from the complimentary station near the entrance. My own paper cup had gone cold in my hand. "I'm sorry," I said. "Who did you say was here?" He adjusted his glasses and turned the monitor slightly away from me. "Your mother, Margaret Mercer. She completed an identity verification appointment at 2:47 yesterday." I stared at him. There are errors you can forgive immediately. A number entered into the wrong column, a payment credited to the wrong account, a customer attached to the wrong file. I had spent 23 years working in municipal billing, and I knew systems made mistakes because people made mistakes. But some errors arrive carrying a weight of their own. "My mother died 11 years ago," I said. His expression changed, but only for a second. Then he became careful, professional, controlled. "Mrs. Hale, perhaps I should ask you to wait while I speak with our compliance department." I did not know it yet, but that was the first mistake he made. Not telling me my mother had visited the bank, trying to stop me from seeing what she had visited it for. Good day, dear listeners. It's Nora again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please subscribe to my channel and like this video. And also let me know in the comments which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. My name is Ellen Hale. I was 47 years old when the dead began appearing in bank records. I lived in Columbus, Ohio, in a modest brick house with my husband, Peter. We had been married for 22 years. Our daughter, Grace, was finishing graduate school in Chicago, and our son, Caleb, had recently moved to Cincinnati for his first real job. From the outside, my life looked settled. I worked as a senior billing analyst for the city water department. It was not glamorous work, but I was good at it. I reviewed disputed accounts, tracked unusual adjustments, and investigated cases where numbers did not behave the way numbers were supposed to behave. A leaking pipe can hide behind a wall for months, so can fraud. The difference is that water leaves stains, money leaves patterns. Peter sold commercial insurance. He wore dark suits, remembered birthdays, and knew how to make people feel as though he had been waiting all day to hear from them. He was patient with clients, charming with waiters, and endlessly calm during disagreements. For years, I mistook calmness for honesty. Our marriage had not been unhappy, exactly. It had simply become organized. We discussed grocery lists, retirement contributions, Grace's tuition, Caleb's car repairs, and whether the porch needed repainting before winter. We kissed each other goodbye in the mornings. We watched television on opposite ends of the couch at night. Nothing appeared broken, but a house does not need to collapse to have a damaged foundation. My mother, Margaret, had been different from me in almost every visible way. She was impulsive where I was cautious, warm where I was reserved. She grew tomatoes too close together, bought books faster than she could read them, and kept cash in old teacups because she did not trust kitchen drawers. After my father died, she stayed in the old family house outside Lancaster, about 40 miles southeast of Columbus. It was a narrow, 3-story farmhouse built in 1908, with uneven floors, deep window frames, and walls thick enough to hide almost anything. My mother loved that house. I did not. To me, it always felt like a ledger no one had finished balancing. Every room carried an obligation. The roof needed repair. The wiring was old. The basement flooded every spring. There was always a tax bill, a broken hinge, a section of plaster turning soft. When my mother died from a stroke at 68, the house passed to me through a simple will. At least, that was what I believed. Peter encouraged me to sell it quickly. "You don't need another responsibility," he told me. "Your mother would not want you tied to a decaying house." He was probably right about the responsibility. He was wrong about what my mother wanted. But I would not understand that for 11 years. I rented the farmhouse to a retired school librarian named Mrs. Bowman, who treated it gently and rarely complained. The rent barely covered repairs and taxes, but I could not bring myself to sell it. Peter occasionally suggested it. I always said I would think about it. Then, in early October, Mrs. Bowman called to tell me she was moving closer to her sister. "I'm sorry, Ellen," she said. My knees are not what they used to be, and those stairs have become a negotiation. I laughed and told her I understood. After she moved, I decided to inspect the house before choosing whether to rent it again or finally put it on the market. That decision was the first loose thread. The bank was the second. 3 days before my visit, I received a letter from North Valley Bank, where my mother had kept a small checking account before her death. The envelope was addressed to Margaret Mercer, not to the estate of Margaret Mercer, not to me as executor to my mother. The letter said that, due to recent account activity, the bank required updated documentation related to a safe deposit arrangement. I assumed it was a mass mailing mistake. Banks merge, account numbers change, and old databases preserve names long after people are gone. Still, the phrase recent account activity bothered me. I checked the estate folder in my home office. My mother's known accounts had been closed during probate. I had copies of the final statements, the death certificate, the tax release, and the probate court's closing order. There was no safe deposit box listed. I asked Peter whether he remembered one. He was standing at the kitchen counter, slicing a lemon over a piece of salmon. "A safe deposit box?" he asked. Yes, he did not look at me. No, your mother hated banks. She used North Valley for checking. That doesn't mean she trusted them. His answer was reasonable, too reasonable. I placed the letter on the counter. Why would they send this now? Peter glanced at it and shrugged. Computer error. Call them tomorrow. Then he picked up the letter and folded it once. Not casually, precisely. He slid it back into the envelope and placed it near my purse. That evening, I noticed something else. Peter went into our home office after I had gone upstairs. I could hear the floorboard beside the file cabinet creak. It was a familiar sound. When he came to bed 20 minutes later, I asked what he had been doing. "Checking a client renewal," he said. He kissed my forehead and turned off the lamp. The next morning, the estate folder was not where I had left it. It was on the same shelf, but facing the opposite direction. Most people would not have noticed. I did. In billing work, small inconsistencies often matter more than dramatic ones. A customer may lie about a $1,000 charge, but the lie is usually exposed by a $6 adjustment made 3 months earlier. I said nothing to Peter. I took photographs of every document in the folder. Then I went to the bank. The man who told me my mother had visited the previous day was named Adrian Cole. He was not the branch manager, as I first assumed, but a senior relationship officer. His office had glass walls, a polished desk, and no personal photographs. After he asked me to wait, he left the room carrying a yellow legal pad. He was gone for 19 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the wall. When he returned, another man was with him. He was in his late 50s, silver-haired, neatly dressed, with the careful smile of someone who had spent years delivering bad news in a pleasant voice. "Mrs. Hale," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Martin Vale. I advise the bank on trust and estate matters." I recognized the name. Not immediately, but enough for it to trouble me. "Do you work here?" I asked. "I'm outside counsel." He sat without waiting for me to invite him. Adrian remained standing by the door. Martin folded his hands. "Mr. Cole tells me there has been some confusion concerning your late mother. He said she was here yesterday. I believe he misspoke." Adrian looked at the floor. I set the bank letter on the desk, then explained the recent account activity. Martin did not touch the letter. "It appears an old customer profile was incorrectly associated with a routine administrative review." "What was reviewed?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss confidential customer information." "She was my mother. I was executor of her estate." "Was executor," he said softly. "The estate was closed. The distinction was deliberate." "So there is an account?" "I did not say that." "A safe deposit arrangement?" "I did not say that either." I sat there for a long time. Silence makes some people nervous. My work had taught me to let it stand. Martin smiled again. "If you provide a certified copy of the death certificate and proof of your prior appointment as executor, we can determine what information, if any, may legally be released." I brought both. For the first time, his expression tightened. I opened my folder and placed the documents on the desk. He looked at them but did not reach for them. Then he asked a question that changed the temperature in the room. "Does your husband know you're here?" It was asked politely, almost conversationally. but it had nothing to do with my authority as executor. Why would that matter? It may not. Then why did you ask? Martin leaned back. Your husband previously assisted your mother with certain financial matters. I assumed he might have useful context. Peter had never told me that, not once. My husband sold her insurance, I said. Yes, Martin replied. Among other things, Adrian shifted beside the door. Martin noticed. Mr. Cole, would you give us a moment? Adrian left quickly. I kept my eyes on Martin. What other things? He exhaled slowly, as though I were making a simple matter unnecessarily difficult. Mrs. Hale, banks retain records for different periods depending on the account type and applicable law. Your mother has been deceased for more than a decade. It is entirely possible that what you received was generated by an archival error. An archival error requiring an in-person identity verification? I cannot confirm that occurred. Mr. Cole confirmed it. He was mistaken. Then show me the record. I cannot. Because it is confidential? Correct. To my dead mother. His smile disappeared. Then he slid my documents back toward me. Leave copies, we will contact you. I gathered them instead. I'll bring certified copies after I speak with a lawyer. Martin's face did not change, but his right thumb stopped moving against his wedding ring. It was a tiny reaction, a $6 adjustment. I stood. As I reached the door, he said, Mrs. Hale, there may be no need to create unnecessary expense or anxiety for your family. I turned. Then the bank should have no difficulty explaining why it believes a dead woman walked into this branch yesterday. Outside, I sat in my car with the doors locked. The sky was gray, and rain had begun to collect on the windshield. People moved in and out of the bank, carrying umbrellas and envelopes, living ordinary lives around me. My hands were steady. My breathing was not. Fear is strange. It does not always make you small. Sometimes it makes the world sharper. I replayed the conversation. Martin knew Peter. Peter had assisted my mother with financial matters. Someone had completed an identity verification under my mother's name. The bank had sent a letter to her old address, which was now my address, because I had updated estate correspondence years earlier. And when I mentioned a lawyer, Martin had warned me about anxiety for my family. I took out a legal pad from my work bag. At the top, I wrote 4 questions. What account still existed? Who appeared at the bank? How was Peter involved? Why had the bank contacted my mother now? Then I added a 5th. What had my mother been trying to protect? I did not call Peter. Instead, I drove to the farmhouse. The rain followed me down Route 33, soft at first, then hard enough that passing trucks threw sheets of water across my windshield. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Mrs. Bowman had left it clean. The curtains were open, the refrigerator was empty, and a faint square remained on the living room wall where her clock had hung. I walked through each room slowly. My mother's presence had faded over the years, but it had not disappeared completely. In the kitchen, one cabinet door still closed harder than the others. In the upstairs hallway, the floor dipped near the linen closet. In her bedroom, the old floral wallpaper showed pale rectangles where framed photographs had once hung. I was not searching for money. I was searching for context. People rarely hide secrets in places that mean nothing to them. My mother had kept important documents in a metal box under her bed. I had found it after her death and turned everything over to the probate lawyer. Insurance policies, tax returns, the deed, my father's military records, nothing unusual. But when I stood in the bedroom again, I remembered something Mrs. Bowman had mentioned months earlier. A draft. She said cold air came from behind the built-in wardrobe during winter. The wardrobe had been part of the room for as long as I could remember. Dark oak, nearly 8 feet wide, with 3 doors and brass handles. I opened it. Empty shelves. A hanging rod. Dust in the corners. I ran my hand along the back panel. Near the bottom, behind a removable shelf, I felt a line in the wood, a seam. I knelt and pressed against it. Nothing moved. Then I noticed 2 screw heads that did not match the others. They were newer, silver instead of darkened brass. Someone had opened that panel and closed it again. I found a screwdriver in the kitchen drawer. The screws came out easily. Behind the panel was not a wall. It was darkness. Cold air touched my face. I used my phone flashlight and saw a narrow space between the wardrobe and the outer wall, perhaps 3 feet deep. Inside sat a small wooden stool, a metal document case, and a portable battery lantern. The lantern still worked. Its light revealed pencil marks on the plaster, old measurements, and a row of hooks. The hidden space had not been accidental. It had been built intentionally, probably during an earlier renovation. The document case was locked. I carried it to the bed and examined it. The keyhole was narrow and old-fashioned. Then I remembered the teacups. My mother had hidden cash inside them because she distrusted kitchen drawers. The china had been packed after her death and stored in boxes in the attic. I climbed the narrow attic stairs and found the box labeled Margaret's Kitchen. There were 11 cups. Inside the blue one, wrapped in Wassax paper, was a small brass key. It opened the case. The first thing I saw was my own name. A thick envelope lay on top, yellowed at the edges. For Ellen. The handwriting was my mother's. I sat on the floor beside the bed before opening it. My hands had begun to shake. Inside was a letter dated 14 months before her death. Ellen, if you are reading this, either I finally found the courage to tell you, or something prevented me from doing it. There is property and money that should one day belong to you and the children. It did not come from your father, and it was not stolen. It came from the sale of land my mother inherited in West Virginia. Land I believed had no value until a gas company purchased the mineral rights. I did not tell you because Peter learned about it before I was ready. He said he would help me invest it. At first I believed him. Then documents began appearing with my signature that I had never signed. I confronted him. He told me I was confused. I was not confused. There are copies in this case. The originals are not all here. Martin Vale arranged the trust. Peter introduced us. Do not confront either of them alone. Take the blue ledger to a lawyer who has no connection to Fairfield County. And Ellen, forgive me. I thought keeping this from you would protect your marriage. I see now that silence protects the person doing wrong, not the person being wronged. I read the letter 3 times. The room seemed to tilt around me. Peter had known my mother possessed hidden wealth. Peter had helped manage it. My mother believed he had used forged documents, and she had hidden evidence inside the walls of her house. Beneath the letter was a blue accounting ledger. My mother had recorded dates, check numbers, account references, and conversations in her small, precise handwriting. There were photocopies of wire instructions, trust summaries, letters from Martin Vale, a handwritten note from Peter promising to correct the beneficiary designation after the review period. One bank statement showed a balance of $4,812,000. Another, dated 6 months later, showed less than $3 million. Large transfers had been made to entities with bland names: Hearthstone Advisory, MV Fiduciary Services, Northcrest Holdings. One payment of $240,000 had gone to Hale Risk Consulting, Peter's company. I sat there until the light outside the windows turned blue. Money was not the first thing I felt. Betrayal was. Not dramatic betrayal, not rage, something quieter. It was the feeling of discovering that a room you had lived beside for years had another door, and everyone but you knew it was there. My phone rang. Peter. I watched his name glow on the screen. I let it stop. He called again. Then a message appeared. Where are you? I made dinner. I photographed every page in the case. Then I returned the originals, locked the case, and placed it in the trunk of my car. I did not take it home. Instead, I drove to a hotel near the airport and paid for one night with a credit card Peter did not monitor. The room smelled faintly of detergent and old carpet. I sat at the small desk beneath the window with the blue ledger open in front of me. At work, when a customer disputed a bill, we did not begin by deciding who was lying. We began with dates. Dates do not care who is charming. I built a timeline. The land sale had closed 13 years earlier. Peter introduced my mother to Martin 2 months later. A trust was created. Transfers began within 6 months. My mother confronted Peter. 14 months before her death, she wrote the letter. 3 months before her death, the ledger entries stopped. After she died, her ordinary estate passed through probate. The trust never appeared, and for 11 years, someone had continued maintaining my mother's customer profile at North Valley Bank. At 11:30 that night, I called my supervisor and left a message saying I would need personal leave. Then I searched for lawyers. My mother had written one clear instruction: No one connected to Fairfield County. I found Rebecca Sloan, a probate and financial litigation attorney in Dayton. Her biography said she had previously worked in bank compliance and handled fiduciary fraud cases. I sent a brief message through her firm's website. My mother died 11 years ago. Yesterday, a bank recorded an in-person identity verification under her name. I found documents suggesting an undisclosed trust and forged transfers involving my husband and the bank's outside counsel. I have original records. She called me at 7:15 the next morning. "Do not email the documents," she said after I explained. Her voice was low and direct. "Do not confront your husband. Do not leave the originals in your home. And do not speak to the bank again without counsel." "I'm in a hotel." Good. The word startled me, not because I wanted praise, because it confirmed the danger was not in my imagination. Rebecca arranged to meet me at her office that afternoon. Before leaving the hotel, I made 3 copies of the photographs on encrypted drives. I placed one in my work locker, one in a safe deposit box at a different bank, and one in my purse. Careful is not the same as afraid. Rebecca Sloan was 52, with short, dark hair and the habit of reading a page completely before speaking. Her office contained no decorative scales of justice, no dramatic law books, and no framed newspaper articles. Only files, orderly shelves, a whiteboard, a coffee maker that had probably worked harder than anyone in the building. She read my mother's letter twice. Then she examined the ledger. "This is unusually detailed," she said. "She recorded everything. Did she work with numbers?" "She managed payroll for a manufacturing company before she retired." Rebecca nodded. "That explains the structure." She pointed to the transfer entries. "These 3 companies may be related. The naming patterns are similar, and the transactions fall just below amounts that would have triggered additional internal review under the bank's old policies. So someone knew the thresholds." "Yes. Peter? Possibly. But your husband sold insurance. Martinvale knew banking and trust administration." I asked the question I had been avoiding. Can money stay hidden from probate for 11 years? If it was held as a separate trust, yes. A properly created trust may pass outside probate. And if the beneficiary documents were changed, that depends on the trust terms, the settler's capacity, the signatures, and whether the trustee acted lawfully. Who was the trustee? Rebecca turned one page toward me. "According to this summary, North Valley Trust Services, the bank itself, yes, and Martin, drafting counsel, and Peter," she tapped another line. "Investment liaison." I almost laughed. The title sounded respectable. Fraud often wears a clean shirt. Rebecca told me we needed to move quickly but quietly. First, she would send the bank a litigation hold letter demanding preservation of every document, video recording, access log, signature card, identification scan, phone note, an electronic record associated with my mother. Second, she would seek emergency authority from probate court to reopen my mother's estate. Third, she would hire a forensic document examiner and a forensic accountant. Fourth, she advised me to protect my personal finances. "Do you have joint accounts?" she asked. "Yes." "Retirement funds? Separate through work? Credit cards?" "Some joint, some individual." "Any home equity line?" I hesitated. Peter had arranged one several years earlier for renovations. We barely used it. Rebecca looked at me. "Check today." The available balance was almost gone. $187,000 had been drawn over the previous 9 months. The transfers went to a business account I did not recognize. Hale Strategic Partners. Peter had never mentioned it. I did not cry in Rebecca's office. I wanted to. But grief can wait. Evidence cannot. We printed the account history and added it to the timeline. Then Rebecca asked where Peter believed I was. "At work, probably. You should decide whether you feel safe returning home." I thought about the man I had slept beside for 22 years. Peter had never hit me, never shouted at me, never broken a plate or punched a wall. His danger was not physical, it was structural. He understood loans, policies, signatures, and persuasion. He knew our children's worries. He knew my routines. He knew which documents I stored and where. A person does not need to raise his voice to dismantle your life. "I'm not going home," I said. Rebecca helped me arrange a temporary apartment through a corporate housing company. I told Peter by text that I had discovered serious financial irregularities and would communicate only in writing until I understood them. He called 9 times. Then he became calm. "Ellen, I'm concerned that grief and stress may be affecting you. Please come home so we can discuss this privately." I took a screenshot. 20 minutes later, another message arrived. "Your mother's financial affairs were complicated. I helped her because she asked me to. You may be misinterpreting incomplete records." Another screenshot. Then came the message that confirmed he knew exactly what I had found. The blue ledger does not tell the whole story. I had never mentioned its color. Rebecca read the message and said, "Do not respond." The next morning, North Valley Bank received her preservation demand. By noon, Martin Vale called me directly. I did not answer. He left a voicemail. "Ellen, this is Martin. I understand you may have located some of your mother's historical financial papers. I want to assure you that many of those materials were preliminary drafts and could be misunderstood without proper context. Litigation would be costly and emotionally damaging to your family. I would welcome a confidential conversation before positions become unnecessarily hardened." His tone was almost kind. I forwarded the recording to Rebecca. "That is not a denial," she said. "No. It is also an attempt to create direct contact after he knows you have counsel. What does that mean? It means he is worried. Within a week, the probate court temporarily reopened my mother's estate and appointed me special administrator for the limited purpose of investigating undisclosed assets." That order gave Rebecca leverage. The bank produced an initial set of records. They were incomplete. The trust agreement was missing 2 schedules. Several years of statements were absent. The visitor log showed that Margaret Mercer had completed identity reviews 7 times after her death, always at the same branch, always with appointments scheduled through Martin Vale's office. Security footage from the most recent visit had supposedly been overwritten. That explanation lasted less than a day. Rebecca's technology consultant reviewed the bank's retention policy and found that branch security video was preserved for 90 days. The bank then claimed the camera had malfunctioned, but footage from the same lobby camera existed for the hour before and the hour after my mother's appointment. Only 22 minutes were missing. Someone had deleted them selectively. The deletion required administrator credentials. Those credentials belonged to the regional operations manager, a man named Curtis Bell. Curtis was Martin Vale's brother-in-law. That was our first concrete proof that the problem extended beyond Peter. The forensic accountant, Dana Wu, began tracing the transfers in my mother's ledger. Hearthstone Advisory led to a limited liability company registered through Martin's law office. MV Fiduciary Services had dissolved 8 years earlier, but its bank records showed payments to Curtis Bell and Peter. Northcrest Holdings owned 2 office buildings and a lake property. Peter had insured all 3. Hale Risk Consulting had received more than $600,000 over 4 years, not $240,000 as the ledger suggested. The ledger was incomplete because my mother had discovered the fraud while it was still growing. After her death, it continued. The money moved through consulting fees, management fees, property purchases, and loans, not all at once, slowly, professionally, like a leak behind a wall. Dana estimated that the original trust had grown to nearly $7 million before the withdrawals and disguised transfers reduced it. "What is left?" I asked. "Possibly $3.1 million in liquid assets," she said. "Additional value may be tied up in real estate." The number felt unreal. I drove past a grocery store on the way back to my apartment and remembered my mother comparing prices on canned tomatoes. She had died believing people she trusted were stealing from her, and she had said nothing to me because she thought the truth might destroy my marriage. The betrayal hurt, but her silence hurt too. Love can become dangerous when it starts making decisions on behalf of another person. 2 weeks into the investigation, Grace called me. "Dad says you left because Grandma's money made you paranoid." I closed my eyes. There it was, the family pressure, not anger, concern, the oldest tool in Peter's collection. "What exactly did he tell you?" I asked. "That Grandma had some investments, that everything was legal, and that you found old papers you don't understand." "I understand the papers. He said you hired an aggressive lawyer who wants to sue everyone. Grace, I am not asking you to take sides, but your father drew money from our home equity line and moved it into a company he never disclosed to me. She was silent. How much? $187,000. That can't be right. I have the bank records. Another silence. Then she asked, did Grandma really have millions of dollars? Yes. Why didn't we know? That is what I am trying to learn. Peter called Caleb too. He told him I was having a delayed grief reaction. He contacted 2 of our oldest friends and asked them to encourage me to come home. He sent flowers to my office. The card said, we can fix this without strangers. I photographed it and gave it to Rebecca. He was building a story, a reasonable husband, an unstable wife, an opportunistic lawyer, a private misunderstanding that did not belong in court. But stories weaken when documents refuse to cooperate. The bank's second production included a scanned driver's license used during the most recent identity verification. It carried my mother's name and date of birth. The photograph was of a woman in her late 70s with dyed brown hair and large glasses. She resembled my mother enough to satisfy someone who wanted to be satisfied. She did not resemble her enough to fool me. I knew the woman. Her name was Judith Crane. She had been my mother's younger half-sister. I had not seen her in 15 years. Judith and my mother shared the same father but had never been close. Judith moved to Florida after her second divorce and occasionally sent Christmas cards. According to public records, she had moved back to Ohio 6 years earlier. She lived 30 miles from North Valley Bank. Rebecca hired an investigator. He found that Judith received monthly payments from North Crest Holdings, $3,000 every month, for almost 7 years. When confronted through her own attorney, Judith initially denied visiting the bank. Then Rebecca sent a copy of the identification scan. Judith changed her story. She claimed Peter had asked her to help resolve a paperwork problem involving family property. She said, Martin Vale assured her that she was acting as my mother's authorized representative. My mother was dead, I said. How could Judith represent her? She could not, Rebecca replied. But she may claim she did not understand the documents. 7 identity verifications? People understand more as consequences become real. Judith's lawyer offered cooperation in exchange for civil immunity. Rebecca did not accept immediately. She made them provide a detailed written statement first. Judith's statement was 26 pages. She described meetings in Martin's office, envelopes containing cash, instructions to wear glasses and keep conversations brief, a forged license arranged by Curtis Bell, Peter's presence at 2 meetings, and one sentence I read until the words lost their shape. Peter said Ellen never asks questions as long as the paperwork looks complete. That was what he thought of me. Not foolish, predictable. A woman who trusted systems because she worked inside one. A wife who would accept a clean folder as proof of a clean life. I was not brave, I was careful. And careful people become dangerous to liars once they stop assuming the forms are honest. The point of no return came through the signature analysis. The forensic examiner compared my mother's genuine signatures with the trust amendments, withdrawal authorizations, and beneficiary changes. Several signatures were simulated, not merely shaky, copied. Some had been traced from a property tax document. One amendment, dated 4 months after my mother's stroke, changed the remainder beneficiary from me to a charitable foundation controlled by Martin Vale. The foundation had never performed meaningful charitable work. Its largest annual expenses were legal fees, property management charges, and consulting payments to Peter. More disturbing was a medical letter attached to the amendment. It claimed my mother had full mental capacity when she signed. The letter was written by a physician named Dr. Samuel Keene. Dr. Keene had died 2 months before the date on the letter. Someone had fabricated a medical opinion in a dead doctor's name to validate a dead woman's signature. The truth has a weight of its own. Once enough evidence gathered, the mystery changed. We were no longer asking whether fraud occurred. We were measuring how many people helped carry it. Rebecca filed a civil complaint against the bank, Martin, Curtis, Peter, the foundation, and the related companies. She alleged breach of fiduciary duty, fraudulent concealment, conversion, civil conspiracy, unjust enrichment, and violations of state banking law. She also requested a temporary restraining order, freezing the trust assets and preventing the sale or transfer of the properties. The judge granted most of it within 48 hours. That afternoon, Peter came to my apartment. He should not have known the address. I opened the door only because the building manager stood several feet behind him. Peter held no flowers, no briefcase, just his car keys. He looked tired. For the first time in our marriage, his calmness appeared to require effort. "May I come in?" he asked. "No. Ellen, please. We need to talk without Rebecca controlling every word. She is not controlling my words. She is escalating this. You took money from my mother." His face tightened. "I was compensated for work. You helped create false documents." "That is not true. You attended meetings with Judith." "I attended meetings about trust administration. After my mother died," lowered his voice, "the trust still required management by someone pretending to be her." He looked down the hallway. "Can we not do this at the door? We are not doing it anywhere." He inhaled slowly. Then he changed direction. "We have children." "Yes. This could destroy their respect for both of us. For both of us. They will be dragged through depositions. Our finances will become public. Your mother's judgment will be questioned. Her private behavior will be examined. Is that what you want?" "No." "Then settle quietly. What are you offering?" He seemed relieved that I had asked. "The house can be yours free and clear. We pay off the equity line. The trust distributes $1.5 million to you. Everyone releases all claims. No admissions. Everyone." He was speaking as part of a group. "Who authorized you to make that offer?" He hesitated. "Martin believes it is fair." There it was. Not my husband coming to save our family. An emissary, a salesman delivering terms. "Did Martin send you here?" "No." "Did he give you the amount?" Peter said nothing. I looked at the man I had married. There were photographs of us spanning more than 2 decades. Hospital waiting rooms, school concerts, beach vacations, Christmas mornings. Some of those moments had been real. That made the betrayal harder, not easier. A person can love you in ordinary moments and still choose himself when truth becomes expensive. "I found Mom's letter," I said. His eyes changed, only slightly, but enough. "She knew," I continued. "She knew you were stealing from her." "I did not steal. She was afraid of you." "That is absurd." "She told me not to confront you alone." His calm expression finally cracked. "Your mother was suspicious of everyone near the end. Then why did you hide the trust from probate?" "Because it was not a probate asset." "Why did Judith impersonate her?" "I had nothing to do with that." "Why did your company receive $600,000 for services?" "What services?" He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I had spent my career asking people to explain charges. Honest people sometimes forget details. Dishonest people often remember categories. Services, consulting, administration, management. Words designed to occupy space where facts should be. "I'm not accepting the offer," I said. Peter stared at me. "You could lose everything. I already lost what mattered." He looked almost hurt. Then he stepped closer. "Ellen, you are making a mistake." "No. I made the mistake 11 years ago when I accepted a complete-looking file without asking what was missing." The building manager moved toward us. Peter stepped back. Before leaving, he said, "Once this becomes public, there is no going back. That is the first honest thing you have said." The legal battle lasted 14 months. Not every day was dramatic. Most of it happened in conference rooms, email chains, numbered exhibits, and long hours of people arguing over which documents had to be produced. That is what real legal pressure looks like. Not constant courtroom speeches, deadlines, affidavits, metadata, bank logs, questions asked again in slightly different ways until a rehearsed answer can no longer hold its shape. North Valley Bank initially blamed rogue employees. Martin blamed Peter. Peter blamed Martin. Curtis claimed he had followed instructions from compliance. Judith claimed she believed she was signing as a family representative. Each person's defense depended on everyone else remaining quiet. That was impossible. During discovery, Rebecca obtained internal emails from the bank's archived server. One message from Curtis to Martin, sent 2 days before my mother's first post-death identity review, said, "Our Margaret solution is ready. Keep Peter out of the branch this time." Too many connections in one room. Another email concerned me directly. Ellen still believes the estate was ordinary. No reason to disturb that. Peter had replied, agreed. She trusts completed paperwork. His exact judgment of me appeared again. Not in Judith's memory, in writing. During Peter's deposition, Rebecca sat across from him at a long table. I watched from beside her. The room was plain, beige walls, water bottles, a court reporter, a video camera. Peter wore a navy suit I had helped choose for Caleb's college graduation. Rebecca began gently. She asked about his career, his relationship with my mother, the services he claimed to have provided. For the first hour, he was composed. He described himself as an informal advisor. He said my mother trusted him. He said the payments were legitimate consulting fees. Then Rebecca placed a document in front of him. Mr. Hale, do you recognize Exhibit 37? He studied it. It appears to be an invoice. From Hale Risk Consulting? Yes. For fiduciary risk analysis? That is correct. What work did you perform? I reviewed insurance exposure related to trust. Assets. Which assets? I would need to review my files. The invoice lists 84 hours of work. Do you have time records? Not after this many years. Did you prepare a written report? I do not recall. Did you send recommendations? I may have. To whom? Mrs. Mercer or Mr. Vale. My client's mother was dead on the date of this invoice. Peter shifted. The trust still existed. That was not my question. To whom did you send your work? I don't recall. Rebecca introduced another invoice, then another, more than 40 invoices. Many billed on dates when Peter and I had been traveling. One claimed he worked 12 hours on Christmas Day. We had spent that day at Grace's house in Chicago. Another billed 10 hours on the day of his knee surgery. Rebecca placed hospital records beside the invoice. When did you perform this work, Mr. Hale? Peter stared at the page. I cannot explain the date. Rebecca did not raise her voice. Did you perform the work at all? My company provided value. That was not my question. His attorney objected. Rebecca waited, then asked again. Did you perform the work described in these invoices? Peter looked toward his lawyer. He was instructed to answer. No, he said. The word was quiet. But once spoken, it changed everything. Rebecca continued. Who told you to submit the invoices? Martin. Why? He said the trust needed to distribute administrative costs. To whom? People who had helped. Helped do what? Peter closed his eyes. Maintain the arrangement. What arrangement? His attorney asked for a break. Rebecca refused until the pending question was answered. Peter looked at me. It was the first time he had done so all day. I saw fear, not remorse, fear. The beneficiary arrangement, he said. Rebecca slid the forged amendment toward him. Do you mean the arrangement created by this document? Yes. Did you know Margaret Mercer did not sign it? Peter's lawyer objected again. The court reporter waited. Peter rubbed both hands over his face. I knew she had concerns. That is not an answer. I did not witness her sign it. Did you know she was dead when later identity verifications were performed in her name? Yes. Did you know? Judith Crane was impersonating her. Another long silence. Yes. The deposition lasted 6 more hours. By the end, Peter had admitted receiving false consulting payments, knowing Judith impersonated my mother, and helping conceal the trust from me. He insisted Martin designed the scheme. Martin's deposition was less cooperative. He denied forging signatures, denied directing Judith, denied controlling the foundation, denied authorizing payments. Then Rebecca showed him the metadata from the fabricated medical letter. The document had been created on a computer registered to Martin's law firm. The author field contained his assistant's initials. A previous version, recovered from the file history, used the name of a living physician. That name had been replaced with Dr. Keen's after the living physician refused to sign. An email from Martin said, "Use Keen. No one will be able to reach him." Dr. Keen was already dead. Martin requested a private conference with his attorneys. After the break, he invoked his right against self-incrimination repeatedly. By then, the matter had moved beyond civil litigation. The bank had filed a suspicious activity report. Federal investigators were involved. The state attorney general's financial crimes unit opened a separate case. North Valley Bank tried to settle. Their first offer was substantial. Rebecca advised me to reject it because it required confidentiality broad enough to prevent us from cooperating with investigators. The second offer was better but still attempted to classify the fraud as unauthorized conduct by individuals. Rebecca showed me the language. They want to compensate you without admitting the institution failed, she said. Did the institution fail? Yes. Then I will not sign something saying it did not. The case was scheduled for trial. 3 weeks before jury selection, the court held a hearing on our request to invalidate the trust amendments and restore the original beneficiary terms. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No dramatic columns, no audience waiting for entertainment, just wood benches, fluorescent light, and people carrying thick binders. Judith testified first. She admitted entering the bank under my mother's name. She described Martin coaching her on what if a teller asked questions. She described Curtis meeting her near a side entrance. She described Peter telling her that I knew about the arrangement, but preferred not to be involved. That lie affected me more than I expected. He had not only hidden the fraud from me, he had used my supposed consent to make others comfortable participating in it. Dana Wu explained the financial trail. She traced every major transfer from the trust into the companies, properties, consulting payments, and personal accounts. The document examiner demonstrated the tracing marks beneath my mother's forged signatures. A bank technology officer testified that the security footage had been manually deleted using Curtis Bell's credentials. Then I testified. Rebecca asked about my mother, the house, the letter, the bank visit, the blue ledger, Peter's messages. I answered carefully. Martin's attorney suggested I was motivated by money. Mrs. Hale, he said, you stand to receive several $1,000,000 if the amendments are invalidated. Correct? Yes. So you have a financial interest in portraying these events as fraud. I have an interest in the court determining whether my mother's name was used lawfully after her death, but you will benefit financially. I will receive what the valid documents say I should receive. He paced slowly. You did not know about this trust for more than a decade. That is correct. You contributed nothing to its growth. That is correct. You did not manage it. No. And yet you now claim all of it. I looked at the judge, then back at him. I claim the right to have my mother's genuine instructions respected. The amount does not change whether a signature is forged. He paused, then asked whether my mother had ever been forgetful. Of course, I said. Everyone forgets things. Was she ever confused? Occasionally. So it is possible she authorized transactions and later failed to remember them. It is possible to forget signing a check. It is not possible to attend a bank 11 years after your burial. The courtroom became completely still. The attorney did not ask another question. The judge issued her decision 9 days later. She found that the disputed amendments were products of fraud and undue influence. She restored the original trust terms. She removed North Valley as trustee. She ordered a full accounting and imposed a constructive trust over the properties purchased with misappropriated funds. She also referred several findings to criminal authorities. The civil cases settled soon afterward. North Valley Bank agreed to restore the missing principal, reimburse lost investment gains calculated by an independent expert, pay legal fees, and fund enhanced controls for deceased client accounts. They did not admit every allegation. Institutions rarely do. But the agreement did not prevent me from speaking to investigators. Martin Vale was later charged with bank fraud, wire fraud, identity fraud, conspiracy and obstruction related to the deleted footage and fabricated records. Curtis Bell accepted a plea agreement and testified. Judith received probation after cooperating, repaying part of what she had received, and admitting her role. Peter pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud and filing false tax returns. He was sentenced to prison. Our divorce was finalized before his sentencing. I did not attend to watch him leave in handcuffs. Justice does not always require an audience. The trust ultimately recovered a little over $6 million, including property value, insurance proceeds, and settlement funds. After taxes, fees, and restitution adjustments, the amount available to me was less than the headlines would have suggested if the story had become public. But it was still more money than I had ever imagined possessing. I did not buy a mansion. I did not quit my job the next morning. I did not replace my car until the transmission failed 2 years later. For a while, I did almost nothing. That surprised people. They thought sudden wealth should produce sudden movement. But after years of hidden decisions made in my name, I wanted every choice to be slow. I paid off the farmhouse and repaired it properly. The roof, the wiring, the foundation, the basement drainage. I kept the hidden space behind the wardrobe, not as a shrine to secrecy, as a reminder that houses remember what families refuse to say. I did not move back into the farmhouse. Instead, I bought a small home outside Dayton, close enough to visit Rebecca, who had become a friend, and far enough from Columbus to feel like I was beginning again. The house had a bright kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and a narrow backyard. I planted tomatoes, too close together, the way my mother had. Grace and Caleb struggled with the truth about their father. I never asked them to reject him. He was still their father, and love does not disappear simply because respect has been damaged.